My best friend publicly shamed me for being too poor for her lavish vacation with our friends, calling me unadventurous for declining. I just wish them a fun trip. I hope they are having fun, because as the lead journalist who just broke the story on their airline's financial collapse, I know their return tickets are now utterly worthless. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The notification lit up my phone with a cheerful little ping, a sound completely at odds with the punch it delivered to my gut. It was a message from Jessica in our group chat, the one we'd named the Inner Circle back in college, a name that now felt like a cruel joke. Pinned to the top of the message was a digital brochure, a symphony of turquoise waters, overwater bungalows, and impossibly white sand. The title read, "Escape to Paradise, a week of luxury in the Maldives." My fingers felt cold as I scrolled through the images. My apartment, with its view of a brick wall and the distant rumble of the city, had never felt so small. I already knew what was coming. For the past week, Jess had been dropping hints, talking about the need for a real vacation and how we all deserved to splurge. I knew her definition of splurging and my own were on different planets. Hers was a world of five-star resorts and champagne brunches. Mine was hoping the price of groceries hadn't gone up again, so I could stick to my budget. I scanned the details of the proposed trip. The cost, even with a supposed group discount, made my stomach clench. It was more than 3 months of my rent. It was nearly half of the down payment I had been painstakingly saving for a small condo, a goal that felt like my own personal Everest. For Jess, a senior marketing manager for a high-end fashion label, it was probably a rounding error. For me, an investigative journalist, it was an impossibility. With a heavy heart, I typed out my reply, carefully choosing words that were polite but firm. "Wow, Jess, this looks absolutely incredible, seriously breathtaking. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make this one. I'm swamped with a big project at work and need to stick to my savings plan. I'll be cheering you all on from here, though. Have an amazing time." I hit send and held my breath, hoping that would be the end of it. For a moment, there was silence. The 3 little dots that indicated someone was typing appeared and disappeared next to 3 different names: Maya, Liam, and Chloe. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Then, Jess's reply came through, sharp and swift. "Oh, Aubrey, always so practical. Don't you ever get tired of being so unadventurous? We're trying to make memories here, not count pennies. It's a shame you don't see the value in that." The words landed like individual stones. Unadventurous. It was a label designed to sting, to frame my financial responsibility as a personal failing, a lack of spirit. And it was posted in front of everyone, our friends, the people who had been my chosen family for over a decade. The public nature of the jab was the worst part. It wasn't a private conversation, it was a public shaming. I watched as the others quickly fell into line. Liam replied with a series of clapping emojis under Jess's message. Chloe added, "Jess is right, you only live once, Aubrey." Even Maya, usually the most sensitive of the group, chimed in with a week. "It would be so much more fun if you were there." I stared at the screen, at the cascade of messages confirming flights and planning outfits, my own polite decline now buried under their excitement. They were moving on without me, led by the ringleader who had just branded me as a killjoy. The sting of being unable to afford the trip was a familiar ache, a dull throb I had learned to live with. But this was different. This was the sharp, searing pain of betrayal. The cruelty from the person I considered my sister was a wound far deeper than any financial limitation. In the hours that followed Jess's comment, my phone remained mostly silent. The group chat hummed with activity, but none of it was directed at me. I was a ghost in our inner circle, my presence ignored as they debated things like which SBF to pack and whether they should book a dolphin-watching excursion. The isolation was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. Late that night, a private message from Maya finally came through. "Hey, sorry about Jess. You know how she gets. We'll really miss you." I appreciated the gesture, but the words felt hollow, an obligatory pat on the head. She hadn't defended me in the group chat. No one had. They had all chosen their side, and it was the side with the tickets to paradise. I typed back a simple, "Thanks, Maya, have a great time," and put my phone away. There was no point in arguing. The damage was done. To distract myself, I turned back to my real work. My tiny second bedroom, which I optimistically called my home office, was covered in charts, financial statements, and printouts of corporate documents. For the past 4 months, I had been living and breathing a single story, my biggest one yet. It was a deep dive into a popular budget airline called Horizon Air. On the surface, Horizon Air was a success story. They offered shockingly low fares for long-haul flights, opening up international travel to people who couldn't normally afford it. Their branding was cheerful, their planes were new, and their customer service reviews were decent. But I had gotten a tip from a source, a quiet whisper about something being wrong under the hood. So I started digging. My desk was a chaotic map of my investigation. Red yarn connected names to shell corporations. Post-it notes flagged suspicious transactions. I had spent countless nights poring over SEC filings and leaked internal memos, fueled by stale coffee and a burning sense of purpose. What I had uncovered was a terrifyingly fragile house of cards. The airline was drowning in secret debt, using funds from new ticket sales to pay off old loans, a classic, unsustainable model. Their impressive revenue figures were a fiction, cleverly crafted by a CFO who knew how to hide liabilities in plain sight. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes tracing the complex web of deceit I had spent months untangling. The company was a ticking time bomb, and I was the one holding the stopwatch. My editor, a grizzled veteran named David who had seen it all, had been both my biggest supporter and my harshest critic. He'd pushed me to find irrefutable proof, to build a case so airtight it couldn't be dismissed. And I had. The final pieces were falling into place. My gaze drifted to the corner of my desk, where a small, framed photo stood. It was of me and Jess, arms slung around each other on our college graduation day, beaming with youthful optimism. We had been inseparable, two halves of a whole. She was the dazzling social butterfly, I was the quiet, observant one. It had worked. A bitter smile touched my lips as a thought surfaced. Unbidden, Jess always loved a good bargain. She had a sixth sense for a sale, a talent for finding designer goods at a discount. It was one of the few things our financial worlds had in common. She would never pay full price if she could help it. I just never imagined her bargain hunting would intersect so perfectly with my investigation. Shaking the thought away, I turned back to the damning numbers on my screen. The story was the only thing that mattered now. The roots of my friendship with Jess ran deep, back to a crowded lecture hall in our freshman year of college. I was nervously trying to find a seat, and she, with her bright smile and effortless confidence, had waved me over to an empty chair beside her. "You look lost," she'd said with a laugh. "Stick with me." And I had. For 10 years, we were a unit. We navigated final exams, terrible part-time jobs, and messy breakups. When my father passed away suddenly in our senior year, Jess was the one who sat with me for hours, saying nothing, just being a steady presence in the overwhelming silence of my grief. She was the sister I never had, and I loved her fiercely for it. Our paths diverged after graduation, but our bond remained. I pursued journalism, a field I was passionate about, but that was notoriously low-paying, especially in the beginning. I took internships that barely paid for my bus fare, worked late nights as a fact-checker, and slowly, painstakingly, clawed my way up to a position at a reputable national newspaper. Every byline felt like a victory, a testament to the years of hard work. I lived simply, budgeting every dollar, my eyes fixed on two goals: building a career I was proud of and saving enough to one day own a small piece of the world for myself. Jess, on the other hand, had walked straight into a lucrative job in marketing. Her career trajectory was a rocket ship. While I was celebrating my first front-page story, she was celebrating a promotion that came with a corner office and a salary that made my head spin. Her world became one of rooftop bars, exclusive parties, and a wardrobe I could only admire from afar. At first, the differences in our lifestyles didn't matter. We were still Aubrey and Jess. But over the last few years, a subtle shift had occurred. Our conversations started to feel imbalanced. She would recount tales of lavish company retreats in Paris or bonus checks that were larger than my annual salary, while I would talk about chasing a lead on city council corruption. I could see a flicker of something in her eyes, not interest, but a kind of pitying boredom. The digs began subtly. "Oh, you're still driving that old thing?" She'd ask, gesturing to my reliable 10-year-old sedan. Or, "We should go to that inn." "Yeo Michelin-starred restaurant? Oh, wait, maybe not. It's a bit pricey." Each comment was delivered with a dismissive little wave of her hand, as if she were doing me a favor by pointing out my limitations. I knew on some level that it wasn't just about the money. Jess was brilliant at her job, but it lacked the substance she saw in mine. My work was featured in documentaries. Her work was a slogan on the side of a bus. When I broke a story that led to the resignation of a corrupt politician, our friends showered me with respect and admiration. At a party celebrating the achievement, I saw Jess standing in the corner, nursing her drink with a tight, forced smile. She was used to being the center of attention, the one everyone admired. That night, she was. Her response was to lean even harder into the one area where she felt superior: her wealth. She began to use her financial power as a tool to define our friend group's activities. The casual pizza nights of our 20s were replaced by expensive dinners at places I couldn't afford. The weekend hikes were swapped for spa days that cost a fortune. I started declining more and more, always politely, always with a valid excuse. But I knew what was happening. She was curating a lifestyle for the group that she knew would eventually exclude me. The Maldives trip wasn't a spontaneous idea. It was the culmination of a years-long campaign, a final, decisive act to remodel our friend group into one that reflected her image, an image I no longer fit. The week after the group chat incident was a blur of focused intensity. The sting of Jess's words became fuel. Every time a pang of loneliness hit me, I channeled it into my work, diving deeper into the labyrinthine finances of Horizon Air. I worked with a ferocity that bordered on obsession, often forgetting to eat, my world shrinking to the glow of my monitor and the documents spread across my floor. The turning point came on a Tuesday night. An encrypted email landed in my inbox from a throwaway account. The subject line was just 2 words: Horizon Insider. My heart hammered against my ribs. The message was brief, from a source who claimed to be a mid-level accountant in the company, disgusted by the fraud he was being forced to overlook. He had documents, he said. Proof. We arranged a dead drop in a quiet corner of a public library. The package he left was a simple manila envelope, but it felt as heavy as a gold bar. Inside were the smoking guns, doctored revenue statements showing projected profits where there were only massive losses, and a detailed ledger of off-book loans that kept the airline artificially afloat. It was the irrefutable evidence my editor, David, had demanded. The house of cards wasn't just fragile, it was already collapsing in slow motion. "This is it, Aubrey," David said, his voice grim as we reviewed the documents in his office the next day. "This airline is flying on fumes and lies. We have to run this. And we have to run it fast before they go bankrupt and take thousands of people's money with them." The pressure was immense. We spent the next several days in a whirlwind of fact-checking, legal reviews, and frantic preparations. We had to be perfect. One wrong detail, one uncorroborated fact, and the entire story could be discredited, leaving me and the paper vulnerable to a massive lawsuit. One evening, exhausted and running on caffeine, I mindlessly scrolled through social media during a short break. A post from Chloe caught my eye. It was a picture of 4 passports laid out on a table next to 4 identical flight itineraries. The caption was bubbly: "Maldives, here we come, T-3 days." My breath caught in my throat. I zoomed in on the picture. The airline logo on the top of the itinerary was unmistakable: the cheerful, stylized sun of Horizon Air. A cold dread washed over me, so intense it felt like a physical chill. It couldn't be, it was too much of a coincidence. My personal and professional worlds, which I had tried so hard to keep separate, were on a collision course. My fingers trembled as I opened our group chat for the first time in a week. The conversation was all about the trip, a stream of excited chatter that I was clearly not a part of. Swallowing my pride, I typed a casual-sounding message. "So exciting! Out of curiosity, which airline did you guys end up booking? Just wondering for future reference." The reply from Jess came almost instantly, and it was dripping with smug satisfaction. "Horizon Air. The prices were an absolute steal. See, Aubrey. Sometimes you find the best adventures when you're not afraid to look for a deal." I stared at her message, the words blurring in front of my eyes. A steal. She had no idea. She had walked her friends, my friends, straight into the path of my story. For a moment, I considered telling them. I could send a cryptic warning, tell them to cancel, to change their flights. But what could I say? I couldn't reveal my source or the details of my unpublished investigation. It would be a catastrophic breach of journalistic ethics, destroying my career and the trust my source had placed in me. They would demand proof, and I had none I could share. My duty was to the truth, and to the thousands of other passengers who had booked tickets with Horizon Air, unaware that their money was vanishing into a black hole. My duty was not to the 4 people who had so casually and cruelly cast me aside. The choice was brutal, but it was clear. There would be no grand confrontation, no tearful showdown where I laid my feelings bare. The battleground had been chosen by Jess in the group chat, and my response would be delivered not with emotional pleas, but with cold, hard facts printed under my byline. My confrontation would be the story itself. In the final days before their departure, the group chat was a whirlwind of exclamation points and packing photos. Maya posted a picture of a new swimsuit, Liam showed off a new camera lens, and Chloe solicited opinions on which of 3 identical-looking sun hats to bring. Through it all, Jess acted as the triumphant general, coordinating their plans and basking in the glory of her perfectly orchestrated event. I watched it all with a profound sense of detachment. The hurt was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but it was now overlaid with a strange sense of pity. They were like characters in a play, happily performing their roles, completely unaware that the stage was about to collapse beneath them. I decided to make one last, subtle attempt, a gesture that would clear my conscience, even if it was doomed to fail. I found a generic news article online titled, "The Importance of Comprehensive Travel Insurance in a Volatile Market." I copied the link and posted it in the group chat. "Hey guys," I wrote, keeping my tone light. "Just saw this and thought of you all with your big trip coming up. It's probably nothing, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. Hope your final packing goes well." The response was predictable. A few of the others reacted with a thumbs-up emoji, but Jess replied with a scoffing message. "Honestly, Aubrey, you need to relax. Stop being such a worrywart. It's a vacation, not a tactical operation. We'll be perfectly fine. Maybe you should try to have some fun while we're gone instead of reading scary articles online." That was it. I had extended a final, veiled branch of caution, and she had snapped it in two. There was nothing more I could do, nothing more I could say. The ethical lines were clear, and so was my path forward. I closed the chat and didn't open it again. The night before their flight, I was in the office with David, going over the final draft of the article. It was a masterpiece of investigative work, a damning and meticulous account of corporate greed and deception. Every claim was backed by triple-sourced evidence. We had statements from aviation experts, financial analysts, and of course, the bombshell documents from my insider. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss emergency bankruptcy proceedings," David said, his eyes fixed on the screen. "They know something is coming. We have to publish at dawn. The moment the markets open in London, this thing needs to be live." "It will be," I promised, my voice steady. As I took the late train home, I saw a final post on social media. It was a selfie of the four of them at the airport, grinning in front of the Horizon Air check-in counter. Jess was in the center, holding her passport up like a trophy. The caption read, "Paradise is calling. Sorry you couldn't make it, Aubrey. You're missing out." I looked at their happy, oblivious faces and felt a deep, quiet sorrow. They weren't just missing out on a vacation. They were missing the whole story. The world was still dark when I arrived at the newsroom the next morning, the city around me quiet and asleep. But inside our office, there was a tense, electric energy. A small team had assembled: David, our lead web developer, and the head of the legal department. This was launch day. I sat at my desk, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands as we ran through the final pre-flight checks. Every link was tested, every photo caption confirmed, every quote triple-checked against my notes. The process was methodical, a familiar ritual before a big story went live, but my heart was pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I thought of my friends, who by now would have landed in the Maldives. They would be checking into their hotel, breathing in the salt air, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. At precisely 6:00 a.m. Eastern Time, David gave a sharp nod. "Do it." With a final, deep breath, I clicked the mouse. The command was sent. The story, titled Horizon's Freefall, how a beloved airline built an empire on debt and deception, was live. The fallout was instantaneous and spectacular. Within minutes, the art. Eichel was the top trending topic on every social media platform. Our website traffic surged so heavily that the tech team had to scramble to keep the servers from crashing. The story was picked up by every major international news outlet, from the BBC to CNN. My face, from my author photo, was suddenly on screen, with news anchors quoting passages from my reporting. By 7:00 a.m., the stock market in London opened, and Horizon Air stock didn't just drop, it evaporated. Trading was halted within 10 minutes as the price plummeted by over 95%. By 9:00 a.m., aviation authorities in both the UK and the EU had announced emergency investigations, citing the serious and credible allegations raised in my article. And by noon, the announcement that I knew was inevitable came through. In a stark, hastily released press statement, Horizon Air announced it was ceasing all operations, effective immediately. All flights were grounded. All tickets, including return journeys, were void. The company was insolvent. I watched it all unfold from my desk, my phone buzzing incessantly. It wasn't my friends messaging me, not yet. It was a flood of notifications from news alerts, congratulatory emails from fellow journalists, and messages from old contacts. My story had done more than just expose a company. It had triggered a full-blown corporate collapse in real time. I felt a dizzying mix of professional pride and a heavy, somber sense of the human cost. Thousands of people, employees and passengers alike, were now facing the chaotic consequences. I finally allowed myself to open social media. The airline's pages were being bombarded with thousands of panicked, furious comments from people stranded in airports all over the world. People who had saved for years for a family vacation. People on their way to weddings or funerals. Their plans, their money, their trust, all gone in a matter of hours. And somewhere in that digital sea of chaos were 4 people I knew intimately. 4 friends who were currently sunbathing in a fool's paradise, holding return tickets that were now worth less than the paper they were printed on. The silence from their end was deafening, but I knew it was only a matter of time. The wave was coming. The first message arrived just after 2:00 p.m. It was from Maya, a single, frantic line in our group chat. "Guys, has anyone seen the news? My mom just sent me a link. Is this real?" A beat of silence, then Liam chimed in. "I can't get on the airline's website. It's just an error page. I'm trying to check our return flight status." Another silence, longer this time. I could almost feel their mounting panic from half a world away. I imagined them on the beach, phones in hand, the beautiful scenery around them dissolving as the ugly reality set in. Chloe was next. "The front desk just told us other guests are having problems too. They said the airline might have stopped flying. Then the deluge began. A flood of messages, chaotic and overlapping. What do we do? This can't be happening. All other flights are thousands of dollars. Through it all, Jess was silent. I knew her well enough to understand why. Her perfect, curated vacation was imploding. The power and control she so carefully wielded were slipping through her fingers. She wouldn't want the group to see her panic. Then, my phone began to ring. The caller ID flashed a name I hadn't seen in years of direct calls: Jessica. I stared at it, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I let the call ring until it went to voicemail. I needed to hear what she would say when she thought I wasn't there to immediately respond. A moment later, the voicemail notification appeared. I put my phone to my ear, my office now feeling like a sealed, soundproof bunker. Her voice was everything I expected it to be. High-pitched, frantic, and laced with a toxic blend of tears and fury. "Aubrey, I know you can see these messages. How could you? How could you do this to us? You must have known this was going to happen, and you let us get on that plane. You let us fly across the world knowing we couldn't get back. We are stuck here, Aubrey. Stranded, you have to fix this. This is your fault. You're a journalist, call your sources, call the airline, do something." The message ended with a choked sob. I listened to it twice, letting the sheer, unadulterated selfishness of her words wash over me. Your fault. Fix this. Even in a moment of crisis, her first instinct was not to ask if I was okay or to understand what had happened, but to assign blame and demand a solution. She saw me not as a person, but as a tool she could use. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening into something akin to steel. I opened the group chat, where the panic was reaching a fever pitch. With calm, steady fingers, I typed my reply, addressing them all but knowing it was truly meant for one person. "I'm sorry to hear you're having trouble. The news is true, the airline has asked operations. It's a difficult situation for thousands of travelers around the world. Unfortunately, my job was to report the facts of the company's financial situation. I have no influence over airline operations, nor would it be ethical for me to use my position to try and secure special treatment. I would recommend contacting your travel insurance provider, as I suggested last week. I hope you can find a safe way home." I hit send. The message sat there, cold and clinical amidst their emotional chaos. For a long moment, no one replied. Then, the 3 dots next to Jess's name appeared, disappeared, and then appeared again. But no message came. For the first time in a decade, Jessica was speechless. The aftermath was as messy as I had anticipated. My friends were stranded in the Maldives for 3 excruciating days. They described it later in splintered, resentful conversations. The paradise they had paid for became a gilded cage. Every expensive cocktail, every beautiful sunset, was tainted by the gnawing anxiety of their situation. They ended up having to collectively pool their money and max out their credit cards to buy 4 one-way tickets on a premium airline, paying a staggering amount that was more than the entire original cost of the vacation. Their flight home was long and silent. The triumphant, laughing group that had departed a week earlier returned as 4 sullen, exhausted individuals, united only by their shared financial trauma and a simmering pot of resentment. The friendship, as I had known it, was over. Jess, predictably, tried to rally the troops against me. She painted me as a villain, a vengeful schemer who had orchestrated their ruin as petty payback for being left out. For a few days, her narrative seemed to hold. My messages went unanswered, my calls unreturned. But the foundation of her argument was weak. Liam, an analyst by trade, was the first one to break ranks. He called me about a week after their return. "Hey," he said, his voice hesitant. "I've been thinking about it. What Jess is saying, it doesn't add up. You have ethics you have to follow. You couldn't have told us." He paused. "And honestly, she was really awful to you about the whole thing. I'm sorry I didn't say anything at the time. I just got swept up in it." Maya followed a few days later, her apology tearful and sincere. Even Chloe sent a short, awkward text admitting that Jess had put a lot of pressure on everyone. The story they told was one of a leader whose mask had slipped, revealing an ugly, manipulative side they could no longer ignore. Jess's attempt to blame me had backfired, exposing her own character in the harsh light of the truth. My friendship with Jess ended not with a bang, but with a quiet, final fizzle. We never spoke again. I saw from her social media that she threw herself even deeper into her world of luxury, as if to prove that the disastrous trip was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. But the group was fractured beyond repair. The inner circle was no more. 2 months later, I was sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes. On the kitchen counter lay a set of keys and a thick stack of papers. The top sheet was a mortgage approval for a small, one-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood with a balcony that overlooked a park. My story on Horizon Air had earned me a significant bonus and a promotion. The down payment I had been saving for was finally a reality. As I taped up the last box, I felt a sense of profound peace. I had not sought revenge. I had simply done my job. I had followed the truth, and the truth had a way of creating its own consequences. The world had dealt Jess a hand that was a direct result of her own choices, her cruelty, her arrogance, and her obsession with a bargain. I looked out my window, not at a brick wall, but at the prospect of my own small patch of sky. I had been called unadventurous for choosing my path, but my quiet, steady journey had led me here. To a place that was mine, built not on showy displays of wealth, but on the solid foundation of hard work, integrity, and a truth that, in the end, set me free.